Over the years, BRICS economies have grown miraculously. Its contribution to the global GDP has recently risen, outperforming the G7 countries. Moreover, the BRICS countries have collectively surpassed the G7 economy. BRICS Plus carries significant demographic and economic weight, accounting for nearly half the world's population, 46% compared with just 10% for the group of 7. BRICS accounts for a larger share of the world GDP, 35.6% at PPP, than the G7. The International Monetary Fund reported that the share of the G7 in global GDP in terms of PPP has been on a steady decline over the past several years, dropping from 50.42% in 1982 to 30.39% in 2022, and expects the figure to drop further to 29.44% this year. China holds the dominant position within the BRICS, accounting for 52% of its total GDP, similar to the United States' weight within the G7. Before I proceed, I encourage you to consider liking the video to show your support for the channel, and don't forget to share your views on the topic in the comment section below. Your feedback is invaluable for us and a wider audience around the world. The gap between BRICS Plus and the G7 is set to widen further thanks to robust economic growth in emerging countries. According to forecasts by the International Monetary Fund, BRICS Plus will account for 37.6% of world GDP at PPP in 2027 compared with 28.2% for the G7. Since the economic growth of the BRICS Plus countries is overtaking the G7 countries, there has been a debate primarily in the West considering BRICS as anti-West or a rival to G7. The question stands relevant concerning the quest for hegemony between the two economic blocs. Over the past few years, it's become increasingly evident that a prime ambition of the BRICS is to function as a collective for the global South to reshape the structure of the world economy. In the words of Brazilian President Lula da Silva, BRICS aims to organize the global South. It has no ambitions to challenge any other bloc or country. Even before the bloc's formation, the BRICS countries were growing immensely. Media worldwide has been dominated by stories that the BRICS Plus will amount to a global systematically important economic entity that will dethrone the advanced G7 nations and world's reliance on the dollar as the preferred medium for cross-border trade and investment transactions. BRICS roughly has been seen as the global South's answer to the G7 major developed economies. BRICS already has its financing mechanism in the form of New Development Bank since 2014, providing easy loans to developing economies for sustainable development and infrastructure projects. The bank, backed by the 5 original BRICS economies, is supported by the new members of the bloc. The capital from new members such as Iran and United Arab Emirates will further fortify the New Development Bank. Therefore, the continuous evolution of BRICS is poised to increase its global influence and solidify its position as a formidable player in the international politics. BRICS also developed a liquidity mechanism known as Contingent Reserve Arrangement (CRA) to support members struggling with payments. On the other hand, after World War I, the dollar placed itself as an international currency for trade. This has strengthened American hegemony and increased its influence over the global value chain. Recently, the global supply chain has been disrupted due to the sanctions on Russia after the Russian-Ukraine war, which affected developing economies badly. To find the way out, other powers seek different ways to tackle the situation affecting affected by the US sanctions, such as adopting strategic autonomy and de-dollarizing the trade. Like many other states, BRICS countries also indicated replacing the dollar with the BRICS common currency. Strengthening BRICS will allow the platform to implement a de-dollarization mechanism soon. BRICS is more flexible than the other Western-led organizations. There are no strict criteria to join the BRICS and only need approval from the member states. However, G7 has no such mechanism and flexibility in adding more members. The reputation of G7 is declining in developing world as well as economic weight. The G7 launched the Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment (PGII) in London in June 2022 to counter Chinese BRI, but still finding ways to fund the initiative. The G7 countries also promised to raise $200 billion yearly till 2027 for the developing world under the PGII. However, the grant could not yet reach its target. The challenging IMF adjustments are also painful for the developing world. Therefore, they are leaning more towards BRICS. The expansion of BRICS has been a clear sign of the growing influence of the developing world. Similarly, it indicates an increase in the bid for the emerging new multipolar world order. BRICS has emerged as a dynamic and flexible economic bloc, reshaping the global economic landscape. Its growth, recent expansion, and commitment to multilateralism in the global south signal a shift towards a more multipolar world order, and G7 will likely face challenges in maintaining its influence and fulfilling its promises to the developing world. However, BRICS is also facing challenges within the bloc. What are the challenges within the BRICS compared to G7? BRICS plus countries share the categorization of constituting an emerging market. However, each country is different in terms of economic, political, demographic, and geographic heterogeneity. This lack of homogeneity is limiting their ability to act effectively as a collective. One of the most known examples is a comparison between China and India. Although both countries have populations of equal size and occupy large land masses, India is the world's largest democracy, whereas an authoritarian communist regime rules China. Moreover, the long history of military skirmishes on the disputed Indo-Sino border as recently as 2020 and again in 2022 contradicts a cordial relationship between the two largest BRICS members. Till now, Beijing and New Delhi have held more than 20 rounds of military talks on the border issues with no resolution in sight. That's not a good sign for the two Asian giants to successfully coordinate economically on the world stage. The enlargement of the club this year, especially the inclusion of states with distinctly different economic, political, and cultural characteristics than the initial group, serves to exacerbate the lack of homogeneity. On the other hand, there is certainly variation among the G7 countries in several dimensions. However, these differences are dwarfed by the commonalities. It is fair to say when disputes arise, there are well-developed, rule-based institutions to which all the G7 states subscribe and avail themselves. That is hardly the case among the BRICS plus countries till now. Hence, BRICS plus countries have to work to eliminate the differences to grow faster than current growth and challenge the other Western-led international blocs. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for new videos on important international topics.